The corridors of the Varistel star cruiser hummed with an unsettling frequency as it drifted in orbit above the fractured moon of Dalter 9. Outside its viewports, the moon's jagged surface caught the harsh light of its parent star, casting silver shadows across the deck. Inside, Queen Aralindra of the Ilarian Dominion floated like a dark jewel amid a sea of officials and protocol droids, her presence as magnetic as the ship's core. She was tall with a feline grace, her skin shimmering faintly with bioluminescent veins that shifted hue with her mood, an unsettling trait to those unfamiliar with Ilarian physiology. And her ears, elegant and long, curved back like the sails of some ancient starship, marked her as the last living link to her planet's ancient royal line. At her side, though not by choice, stood Sergeant Dane Rourke, a human soldier whose uniform still carried the faint tang of gun oil and cafeteria coffee. He'd been drafted into this diplomatic detail after an ill-advised bar brawl on Cygnus 12, his transfer orders scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin. He'd expected babysitting a queen would be a dull gig, heavy on etiquette and light on excitement. He hadn't expected her to be so alive. Her eyes, a deep amethyst that seemed to drink in the room's light, flicked over him once, dismissing him with a grace that would have made a lesser man blush. Dane just scratched the scar on his jaw and smirked. Royalty or not, she's got that same look my old drill sergeant had before he made me scrub the latrines. The tension in the conference hall thickened as diplomats from both sides, human and Ilarian, circled the negotiation table like rival predator packs. Hover drones floated overhead, their lenses blinking with constant scrutiny. A tray of synthetic pastries trembled as a dignitary's elbow brushed it, sending a single tart skittering across the polished surface like an escaped rodent. Dane resisted the urge to catch it, though he'd have preferred chasing pastries to standing there like a coat rack. Queen Aralindra's voice, rich and measured, carried across the hall. The terms are simple: mutual non-aggression, trade routes guaranteed, and no more biological experiments on border planets. She paused just long enough for the humans to squirm. In return, the Ilarian Dominion offers an alliance unlike any seen in this quadrant, her words laced with both honey and steel. Dane watched the human officials fidget, their eyes darting from her to the towering ceremonial guards stationed behind her, a quartet of living statues, bred in vats to be perfect soldiers. Not a hair out of place, not a micro-expression betraying thought. It was, Dane thought, unnerving. But then again, so were most things in this galaxy. Just as the human ambassador, a man who smelled like ozone in too many laser briefings, cleared his throat to speak, a diplomatic droid serving drinks beeped, its chest panel glowing bright red. Warning, it intoned. Critical? Then with a sound like 1,000 bees erupting from a toaster, the droid exploded. Metal shards and plasma fire seared through the hall. Diplomats shrieked. The Queen's guards, the elite warriors bred to die for her, turned and fled like startled birds. Dane's instincts kicked in, ignoring the protocols of diplomacy. He lunged, grabbing Aralindra by the waist and dragging her behind an overturned console. Heat washed over them as debris rained down. Your Highness, he gasped, heart hammering like a hyperspace drive. If you could not get blown up on my watch, that'd be peachy. She blinked, staring at him as if seeing a curious new species, her voice sharp and elegant even in chaos. Why aren't you running too? Dane grinned, sweat and soot streaking his face. Because I've got nowhere better to be. The diplomatic suite aboard the Varistel had been hastily converted into a safe room, though the flickering force field and the suspiciously leaky plasma conduit overhead didn't exactly inspire confidence. Dane Rourke stood at the makeshift entrance, his sidearm drawn, scanning for threats like a man who'd spent too many years on the wrong end of bar fights. He could still smell burnt circuits from the earlier explosion. It clung to his uniform like a bad date. Inside, Queen Aralindra reclined on a low-slung, crescent-shaped couch that looked suspiciously like it belonged in a cheap hollow novel. Her ears, long and elegantly curved, trembled faintly as she tried to maintain her composure, though Dane noticed the slight twitch every time the lights flickered. Her bioluminescent veins pulsed in slow, deliberate patterns, a silent language he hadn't learned yet. He'd never seen a queen so rattled, though she'd probably disintegrate him on the spot if he said that out loud. "Sergeant," she said, her voice cool as an ice nebula, "I assume your humans are trained to handle a minor—" She waved a hand dismissively at the charred conference room visible beyond the shield. "Incident?" "Sure," Dane deadpanned, checking the power pack on his pistol. "We get about 3 assassination attempts a week back on Earth. Thursdays are usually double-punch card days." Her eyes narrowed. Amethyst, sharp as neutron stars. And for a second, Dane wondered if he'd pushed the sarcasm a little too far. But then, to his surprise, her lips twitched, a faint smile like a star peeking through the nebulae. "Is this your way of making light of the situation?" she asked. "It's either that or panic," Dane said. "And I look terrible in panic. All that screaming and running, you know." A hiss from the plasma conduit overhead made them both jump. Dane swatted at it like a man chasing a mosquito, though he'd have preferred a functioning fire suppression system. "Any idea why your super soldiers ran like scared kittens?" he asked, trying to distract her from the chaos. Her smile faded, replaced by something closer to confusion than fear. "They were bred to protect me at all costs," she said, voice low. "Genetic loyalty, unbreakable. It's unprecedented." She hesitated as if the words themselves were poison on her tongue. "Perhaps their programming was compromised." Dane grunted, holstering his pistol. "Or maybe they were just scared." He shrugged. "Happens to the best of us." He tilted his head at her. "Even queens, I'd bet." Erlindra's ears twitched again, this time in what he suspected was irritation or amusement. Maybe both. She shifted, leaning forward, the dim light tracing the delicate angles of her face. "You're suggesting that fear is a universal constant," she said. "That it can override even the strongest conditioning?" "Something like that," Dane replied. "Fear's funny like that. Makes cowards out of heroes and heroes out of drunks." He paused, gave her a crooked grin. "Guess we'll find out which one I am." She tilted her head, studying him as if he were some fascinating insect under glass. "Perhaps you're both," she said, her tone half curious, half teasing. "A hero and a drunk." Before Dane could reply, preferably with something witty involving whiskey and bad decisions, a flicker of movement in the corridor caught his attention. His hand flew to his weapon, senses sharpened by a decade of combat. A figure emerged from the shadows, a maintenance droid with one photoreceptor blinking erratically, carrying a tray of what looked suspiciously like reheated protein packs. It beeped apologetically. "Dinner?" Dane said, lowering his weapon. "Because nothing says royal banquet like protein packs that smell like feet." Erlindra actually laughed, a sound like starlight breaking through clouds. "I suppose I'll have to trust your human culinary traditions," she said, eyes gleaming. Dane grinned, handing her a slightly singed pack. "Trust me," he said. "They're better than they look. Kind of like me." Thraxis 6 was a jungle moon that smelled like damp moss in impending doom. Dane Rourke stood at the edge of a glowing ravine, boots sunk deep in a mossy quagmire, scanning the perimeter for signs of movement. Above him, the sky pulsed with bioluminescent clouds that danced in rhythm with the moon's electromagnetic storms, a sight both beautiful and migraine-inducing. The crash site behind him smoldered, the Varus Tell's once proud hull, now a tangle of scorched metal and crumpled starcraft plating. Queen Erlindra limped over the tangled wreckage, her elegant ears canted back in annoyance. She looked more regal than ever, despite a singed hem on her gown and a smudge of carbon streaking her cheek. "Sergeant," she called, voice tinged with exasperation, "remind me why I'm trusting you to guide us through this forest?" Dane didn't even look up. "Because, Your Radiant Highness, your last idea of direction led us into a colony of psychic leeches the size of small dog," he drawled. He swatted at a buzzing insect that looked like a cross between a mosquito and a chainsaw. "Also, I've got better boots." Erlindra's sigh sounded like an exasperated queen rather than a grateful survivor. "You're insufferable." "Yeah," Dane said, cracking a grin. "But at least I'm consistent." He glanced at her, noticing how the moonlight caught in the delicate tracery of her bioluminescent veins. They pulsed softly, a rhythm he'd learned to read: fear, caution, defiance. She was putting on a brave face, But he knew the weight of leadership was heavier than her ceremonial regalia. They made their way through a dense undergrowth that smelled like ozone and decay. The plants here weren't just alive, they were aware. Every time Dane brushed against a leaf, it shivered, releasing tiny spores that danced like miniature fireworks. He muttered under his breath, "Great, alien fireworks," because my day wasn't already weird enough. Erlindra paused beside a massive root that looked suspiciously like a predatory eel. "This place is a living laboratory," she mused. "My ancestors attempted to terraform Thraxis centuries ago. Some of the genetic engineering must have endured." She trailed off, one hand resting on the root. It trembled beneath her touch. "I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes." "Neat," Dane said, his tone dry as a Martian desert. "Next time your ancestors want to make a jungle of nightmares, maybe leave the carnivorous moss out of the recipe." He crouched beside a bush that hummed like a broken microwave. "Anyway, any idea what's tracking us?" Eralindra's ears flattened. "Something's been following us since the crash. I can hear it, like a whisper just beyond the wind." Her eyes glowed faintly, the violet hue deepening as her Ilarian senses stretched outward. "It's not human," she added, voice tight. Dane rose, flexing his fingers around the grip of his sidearm. "Not human, huh?" he said, forcing a grin. "Guess that's the day's theme. Alien jungles, alien fireworks, alien assassins. All we need now is an alien bar serving drinks with umbrellas, and I'd call this a party." She gave him a sidelong glance, her expression somewhere between horror and amusement. "Your species' capacity for humor in the face of mortal peril is astonishing," she said. "Truly a marvel of evolution." "Thanks," Dane replied. "We get that a lot." He scanned the perimeter again. "All right, princess, stick close. If anything jumps us, I'll do my best to die heroically." He paused. "Or at least hero-adjacent." Erlindra's laughter rang through the alien night, a sound that reminded him of stars colliding in the void. And despite the darkness gathering around them, despite the threat they couldn't quite name, something about her laughter made the jungle feel just a little less hostile. The ashen-fold citadel hung in orbit like a malignant star, its spires jutting from a dark asteroid. Black stone carved into shapes that seemed to defy geometry. Dane Rourke's head throbbed as he lay half-buried under the collapsed remains of a tower wall, plasma scoring his uniform, and a smell like burnt circuits curling into his nose. A droid lay beside him, its photoreceptors blinking erratically, the words Service Unit 7B scrawled on its chassis in a language he didn't understand. "Hey, flesh sack," it croaked, its voice box glitching between static and sarcasm. "You planning on lying here until the star collapses?" Dane groaned, pushing himself upright with the grace of a hungover rock. "Was hoping for a nap, but thanks for asking." He wiped a streak of black dust from his face and glanced around. The corridor beyond was a mess of broken servos and flickering anti-gravity fields. He'd always imagined cultist lairs as being a bit more organized. 7B emitted a mechanical sigh. "There's a high-energy ritual chamber 3 decks up. If your queen's in trouble, that's where they'd take her. Also, there's a 78% chance you'll die if you try to get there." Dane smirked. "Perfect odds for a date night." He patted the droid's chassis. "You're coming with me." "Wonderful," 7B muttered. "I always wanted to die heroically in the company of a bipedal organic with a death wish." As they stumbled through the labyrinth of the citadel, Dane's boots crunched on the remains of failed experiments. Glass tubes, half-grown clones, something that looked suspiciously like a jellyfish with teeth. "I take it your Queen's people aren't the only ones fond of genetic tinkering," he muttered. "Correction," 7B replied. "The Ashen Fold worship entropy itself. They believe in accelerating decay. Their theology is inefficient." "Sounds like my last landlord," Dane quipped. When they reached the high-energy ritual chamber, Dane was struck by the sheer size of it. Columns of black crystal arcing up toward a ceiling so high it vanished into darkness. The air shimmered with heat, and a circle of chanting cultists encircled a stone dais. On it, Queen Erlindra knelt, head bowed, her bioluminescent veins glowing with a frantic rhythm. Her ears, elegant and delicate, twitched with each pulse of the ceremonial blade that hovered inches from her throat. Dane's heart stuttered. She looked small there, small and impossibly alone. 7B beeped quietly. The cultist leader is the one with the ceremonial antlers, it noted dryly. Might I suggest aiming for the antlers first? Dane's grin was pure mischief. Now you're talking my language. Drawing his plasma pistol, he charged, his boots thundering on the ancient stone. Hey, space weirdos! He yelled, voice echoing. Didn't your mother ever teach you not to play with knives? The cultists spun, their chanting faltering, and the leader with the ceremonial antlers raised his hands, dark energy crackling at his fingertips. You dare interrupt the awakening of the star's mind? Dane shot him in the antlers. The cultist collapsed with a surprised gurgle, ceremonial headgear sparking as it shorted out. Erelindra's eyes widened. Dane! He skidded to a stop in front of her, panting. Hey, Your Majesty, he said, offering her a lopsided grin. Need a +1 to this sacrifice? She laughed, a sound that sent the cultists reeling in confusion. You are the most absurd creature I have ever met, she said. Yeah, Dane said, but I'm your absurd creature. They had escaped the Ashenfold Citadel with all the grace of a malfunctioning warp drive, the stolen grav bike rattling beneath them like a cheap amusement ride. Dane Rourke clung to the handlebars with a grin that was half terror, half glee, while Queen Erelindra, hair singed at the tips, ears still trembling from the adrenaline, sat behind him, holding on so tightly he could feel her pulse through his armor. Do you always have this much fun on your rescue missions? She shouted over the whine of the engine. Only on days ending in Y, he yelled back, twisting the throttle as the jungle moon below blurred into streaks of bioluminescent green. The bike's stabilizers groaned in protest, its guidance system blinking error codes that suggested immediate disassembly might be preferable to continued flight. Behind them, the Ashenfold's cultists scrambled to their own ships, the air alive with the whine of plasma rifles and the occasional hysterical shriek. Dane swerved between towering crystal spires that jutted from the moon's surface, like the broken teeth of some ancient cosmic beast. I hope you have a plan, Erelindra called, her voice trembling between exasperation and reluctant amusement. Plan A, don't die, Dane shot back. Plan B, don't die stylishly. She laughed then, a clear, bright sound that startled him more than any plasma blast could. That's your entire plan? It's gotten me this far, he quipped, grinning as he pulled them into a steep climb that sent sparks flying from the undercarriage. The stars above them seemed impossibly bright, the blackness between them deep and infinite. But in the distance, a beacon blinked, a single, steady pulse like a heartbeat against the night. There, Erelindra said, pointing with one delicate, long-fingered hand. That's an Alarian space station, old, abandoned during the war, but its emergency beacon is still active. Dane's grin widened. Then let's go say hello. They angled the bike toward the beacon, the moon shrinking behind them. The station loomed ahead, ancient, vast, its hull pockmarked with centuries of meteor impacts and drifting ice. Its docking ring gaped like the maw of a slumbering beast. Dane guided them into the bay, the grav bike skidding to a graceless halt. He killed the engine and swung off with a sigh of relief. Home, sweet junkyard, he muttered. Erelindra dismounted with practiced grace, her bioluminescent veins glowing faintly in the gloom. This place hasn't seen life in a century, she said, but its AI core might still function. A faint hiss of static echoed through the station as ancient lights flickered to life. Then a voice, crisp, bored, and deeply sarcastic, spoke from the walls. Oh, look, it intoned. Organics. Just what I wanted for my 300th anniversary party. Dane blinked. Great. A snarky AI Erelindra folded her arms. Hallie 92, she called, her voice commanding. I am Queen Erelindra of the Alarian Dominion. We seek sanctuary and information. Hallie 92 gave an electronic sigh. Oh, a queen. That's a new one. Usually it's pirates or religious cultists, or the occasional lost maintenance worker with delusions of grandeur. Dane grinned. Well, I've been accused of grandeur before. Erelindra shot him a look that was equal parts exasperation and amusement. Behave, she murmured. Halley 92's lights pulsed in rhythm with its words. I'll open the core archives, but just so we're clear, if you awaken any ancient cosmic horrors in there, I'm not cleaning it up. Dane leaned closer to Erlindra, voice low. Just once, I'd like to find a station that doesn't have ancient cosmic horrors. She smiled, her ears curving delicately. In this galaxy, that's a luxury none of us can afford. And together, with Halley 92's cynical commentary humming in the background, they stepped into the dark heart of the station, toward the secrets that might save them both. The stars above Ilaria Prime shimmered like scattered diamonds, their light reflecting off the battered hulls of the Coalition fleet in the Ilarian Royal Guard ships. Dane Rourke stood on the deck of the Boomstick Express, a repurposed gunship now sporting a patchwork paint job that made it look like an angry space clown. The final battle raged around him, plasma fires streaking the sky in brilliant arcs. But amid the chaos, he grinned. Well, at least no one's complaining about my parking job now, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Queen Erlindra, standing beside him, her long ears adorned with ceremonial filaments that glowed like stardust, rolled her eyes, an expression he'd come to cherish almost as much as her laughter. Focus, Dane, she chided, her voice equal parts regality and exasperation. The Ashen Fold has activated the stellar weapon. If they succeed— Yeah, Dane interrupted, cocking his plasma rifle with a theatrical flourish. Everyone dies, star goes boom, bad guys cackle in victory. I've seen this Hollow movie. He winked at her. Don't worry, Your Highness, I've got this. She gave him a look that was half adoration, half exasperation. You are the most absurd hero I've ever had the misfortune to meet, she said. Lucky for you, I'm your absurd hero, he shot back, his grin widening. They made their way to the main control deck, ducking falling debris and sidestepping malfunctioning servitors that sparked like drunk lightning bugs. Halley 92's voice echoed in their comms, more sarcastic than ever. Oh, good, you made it. I was just starting to plan the epitaph. Here lies the Queen and her idiotic human, both vaporized in a spectacularly stupid fashion. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Dane muttered, vaulting over a sparking conduit. Inside the control room, the Ashen Fold's leader loomed, a figure clad in ceremonial robes with circuitry woven through the fabric, eyes burning with fanatical light. You are too late, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. The star's mind awakens, and all will be reborn in entropy. Dane leveled his plasma rifle, eyes gleaming. That's a hard pass, pal. He fired, the bolt slicing through the air and striking the cultist square in the chest. The cultist's eyes widened in disbelief before he collapsed, his weapon sparking and dying. Erlindra sprinted to the main console, her long fingers dancing across alien keys. We can override the sequence, she shouted. Dane covered her, shooting down the last of the cultists with casual efficiency. Hurry, he called, before the star gets any bright ideas. Her fingers flew, lights shifted, alarms silenced, and the star's destructive pulse faded. She exhaled, a shudder of relief passing through her. It's done, she whispered. We've stopped it. Dane turned, his grin softer now. Nice work, Your Majesty, he said. Did I mention I love the ears? She laughed, the sound a balm to the scorched air. You may have mentioned it once or twice, she said. Outside, the battered fleet cheered as the threat dissipated and the fractured alliances slowly reformed. Dane watched the celebrations with a crooked smile. He'd come to this galaxy as a reluctant bodyguard, a man running from his own past. But here, in the aftermath of chaos, he'd found a reason to stay. A queen who'd shown him that loyalty could be a choice, not just a duty. Erlindra turned to him, her violet eyes glowing with quiet strength. You know, she said, voice tinged with mischief, I never thought I'd rely on a human, let alone trust one with my life. Dane chuckled, slipping his arm around her waist. Hey, you picked the best one, he said, his voice warm. And as the stars above them shone with renewed brilliance, Dane Rourke, once a drifting soldier, stood tall beside the Queen of Ilaria, ready to face whatever this galaxy could throw at them.